Well, welcome everybody. My name is Doug Blizzard with Catapult. Happy to have you here today to a topic that we get a lot of questions about, and that is healthcare options for smaller employers. We've done many healthcare events over the years, and seems like the majority of the follow-up questions we get after those events come from smaller companies who, for a variety of reasons, feel like their options are limited. So we hope today to hopefully expose you to the range of options that are available, believe it or not, even as a smaller employer. That's kind of our goal today. A couple of admin issues before we get into the content today. As always, this is being recorded. We'll send out a recording link a few days after the session if you miss it or have to drop off, or you know someone else that needs to hear this. If you have questions, as always, please use your question section on your little control bar there, and we will try our best to get to those questions as we go. We have people in the background look at those questions, and we'll ask them as appropriate. And if we don't get to all of them, we will surely follow up later. So I think that's my only admin for right now. There'll be more admin opportunities at the end. All right, so let's kind of advance the slide here and let's just dive right in. Again, I probably talk to 4 to 5 companies a week about something to do with healthcare, and some large number of these companies are smaller. I mean, they're less than 50, less than 75 employees. And what I tend to see with these companies, number one, every one of them has the same challenge that we all face now, whether we're 5 employees or 5,000, and that is, how do we attract and retain? And obviously the healthcare plan is a piece. It's not the only thing, but it is a piece of that. And it's definitely one of those things. I like to talk about how anything you do that involves spouses is important. And the healthcare plan, of course, is one of our things that we do as an employer that involves spouses and families. And so you get this immediate reaction when you're trying to attract someone. And if your plan is subpar or it's high cost, you get that immediate visceral reaction from the wife or the husband or whatnot. So clearly, while it's not the only thing we do to attract and retain, if for no other reason than the employee's or the applicant's spouse is weighing in, it's an important part of our attraction and retention process. It's also very newsworthy on a lot of different social media and the news. So to the extent you're not competitive, this is not one of those things that, well, no one really knows, so you're okay. It's kind of in our face a lot out there as citizens, as Facebook users, and et cetera. So it's an important part there. Obviously, the smaller you are, the less time you have, the less expertise you have, the less resources you have to devote to this. That's an issue I see a lot of. I see a lot of small companies who, when they call me the first time, well, we're offering a stipend right now to our employees. We pay them a couple $100 a month, and then they go out and in many cases use that to buy beer and cigarettes, as the joke goes. That's all we have now. It's all we can afford. A lot of brokers out there don't really specialize in the small business market. They take it kind of, well, okay, we'll take it, but they don't really like it or don't specialize in it, or they try to fit every company kind of through one or two Blue Cross or a Cigna plan, and then they're done. And so nothing against the brokers. It's just, obviously they make more money with larger clients. And I understand that. So it doesn't help you as a small business, though, needing support. So we're going to hopefully get you some exposure today to help you there. And then also there's just a very common perception that there just aren't many options out there for small companies. There just aren't. I've been told, I read, I experienced, I called, and I was told my only option was Blue Silver or whatever the issue is. So my primary goal today with this session is to have you leave realizing that no, in fact, there are quite a few options, some better than others, some riskier than others. But you'll learn there are a lot of options along the path here, depending on kind of where you are in your journey. So speaking of that, let's kind of go to the next slide here. Not going to go into great detail here, but this kind of shows you. I mean, you on the one end, of course, if you're below 50, the healthcare is optional, but at above, you just decide I'm not going to provide healthcare. I'm out. We have some larger employees. I'm just going to pay a fine. That's one option. As a small employer, you can just say, I'm not going to provide. I mean, according to Kaiser, overall, 59% of employers provide health care. That's heavily weighted because of the smaller ones. Once you get above 50, it gets to close to 100%. But that's an option, just no health care. And you kind of walk down this path. Over the last few years, the government has offered us now some reimbursement accounts, QSARAs and ICHRAs. We'll explain those later, that allow you to reimburse employees for going out themselves on the exchange and buying healthcare. You know, the classic healthcare reimbursement arrangements, HRAs, were not to be used for premiums. They could be used for, you know, other medical things, but not premiums. So these new instruments, QSARAs, ICHRAs, allow you to reimburse. So if you're a small employer and just don't have the time, expertise, focus to go out and find a plan, have the employees go on the exchange and get all kinds of options based on their interests, their needs, their family size, their demographics, their cost structure. So that's one way to expand the options. There's other plans called MECs and MERPs, and we're going to go through all these acronyms as the day goes. Obviously, a lot of employers are on a traditional plan. That term BUCA stands for Blue Cross, United, Cigna, Aetna, Humana. So that's kind of the term we use for like the traditional carriers. A lot of small employers are on the traditional carriers. That's an option. And there are ways to maximize that. Remember, I told you earlier, a lot of brokers don't really want to spend a lot of time with you because you're not a big amount of money for them. And so there are brokers though that do specialize and help you to maximize your experience as a small business. So let's talk about that today. Obviously, as companies start getting larger, things like level funded plans make sense. As they get a little bit larger, believe it or not, now you can self-fund in this state at 26 employees. So there are options out there. And I know in the past, there's a lot of misconceptions about what self-funding means. To a lot of people, that means I'm paying every bill. No, that's not what that means. So we're going to go through this range today of options, all the way from these reimbursement accounts, all the way through better ways to utilize the carriers, all the way through to self-funded and more disruptive models. And in some, of course, some companies just choose to go the route of a PEO. For example, we had a session on PEOs last month or a few months ago. So I encourage you to look at that recording, where the PEO, basically your employees become employees of the PEO. They then take all these employees as a master plan to provide benefits and other services. That's an option. It's a pricey option. That's out there. You might recall a few years ago, we were hoping that associations like Catapult were going to be able to provide an association health plan, for our members. That obviously came out in the Trump administration. It got stopped or enjoined by a judge. Even before it got enjoined, the North Carolina version of that was not looking very attractive. We're still kind of waiting to see what's going to happen with that. So again, put that out there as a potential at some point. It's not an option right now. This state, North Carolina, historically has not been very friendly towards groups like us providing, a health plan for any industry. There's a few MEWAs in this state, but they're industry focused. This notion of I've got manufacturers and pharmacy companies and retail and construction, not very friendly here historically about doing a plan for all those people. So we'll see what happens with that. I wouldn't hold your breath on that. So today's focus is going to be on what you actually can do now, not what might theoretically happen in the future. So that's kind of why I want to start this. Again, just to first let everyone know there are options out there. Don't feel like because you're small, you're stuck and all you can do is go to Blue Cross. That's not your only option. So we actually wanted to start with a quick poll question, just kind of see where you are right now, which will kind of help us better frame the presentation today. So if you can put the poll up there right quickly, we'll give us a quick answer as kind of where you are right now on this continuum of options. And if you're offering two, then pick the primary one you're doing. All right, do we have an answer? Okay, so you can see there of our group today, interesting, the majority are fully insured. Obviously 13% no insurance, 7% in a progressive kind of plan. Interesting that nobody's level funded. I find that surprising that we'd have that break from fully insured to level funded. That's interesting. So, because I know for a lot of companies as they get larger, a common strategy from the broker community is to go level funded. So interesting. So let's jump in here. I'm going to introduce a range of people, experts throughout the spectrum of healthcare. And so first up is Mark Gully. So Mark, you can find your way to the podium here, the virtual podium. Mark is the CEO of a company called Drawbridge One, and they've really put together some progressive options that I think you're going to find interesting. I was very interested when I first learned about these. And so with that, Mark, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Doug, and I appreciate the Catapult team for including us today in the presentation. So a lot of options were mentioned on that kind of menu slide, continuum slide. We're going to cover a bunch of those today to talk about options that are available to you that you may or may not be aware of. And we're going to move through some of those in as much detail as we can with the time. And the bottom line is we can always follow up on the other side with additional questions. Next slide. All right, so first of all, why does this matter, right? And you see the slide here. We've got a couple of factors that have really kind of compounded over the past several years, right? And we describe this as the unsustainable squeeze. So if you look at the graph, what you see is effectively workers' earnings from 1999 to 2021, so the last 2 decades, as far as the increase overall inflation, right? Which is, earnings have outpaced inflation a little bit there. But when we see the 2022 numbers, as you could expect, that's probably going to go the other way or significantly contract, right? Based on interest rates and inflation being hot right now. But if you look at the orange line, right, you see the increase in family premiums over that time period, right? So many of you on this call have had the situation where you've gotten an increase from a carrier, right? And it's one thing for you, the employer, to figure out, hey, how do we absorb this? Can we absorb this? And can our employees absorb this? But at some point, it's not just being able to afford the premium, right? It's like, hey, can our employees actually afford the deductible or out-of-pocket max, right? If they do have an incident, right? And is health insurance really the best way to pay for healthcare anymore? And the answer is maybe it is, maybe it isn't, right? And we're going to walk through some strategies today to kind of help you take a closer look at that and hopefully open your eyes to some things that may be helpful. Next slide. Okay, so when we think about kind of the healthcare continuum for employers, kind of 2 ways we tend to think about. So at a high level, a lot of folks really think they have 2 options. They either offer insurance or they don't offer insurance, right? When they offer insurance, we would call that typically a defined benefit plan. That's where the employer is going to contract with an insurance company to provide that healthcare policy. Typically, they're going to pay, at least 50% of the employee-only coverage tier, and typically for the buy-up for dependents, family, child, spouse, the employee is going to pick up a large portion of that, right? But what really happens is that bottom point, which our employees really are subjected sometimes to really wide swings in the annual cost of healthcare coverage, and that's what's continued to compound over time. So the other option on the far right would really be no insurance, right? And that's where, look, if I'm an employer under 50, I really don't have to do anything. Yes, I can do things, right? There are many things I can do, but for whatever reason, you may have just not offered that, and people are on their own, right? They can go to the marketplace individually. They can sign up on a spouse's plan. They could join a medical sharing community, choose a short-term plan, or just, some folks just go without coverage, right? Which can be really risky if something happens. Where we tend to operate is in this defined contribution space, right? So think specifically account-based plans and what we call alternative medical, which would be things like medical cost sharing, which would be things like QSERA's, ICHRA's, all those plans, right? So that's where we're going to dig in today. And really the way to think about this is the stipend model, right? So Doug mentioned the stipend model. And today, if you gross up folks and give them a stipend in their paycheck, that's clearly one way to do it. To his point, do you know where that money goes? Yes or no? The bottom line here is some of these vehicles allow you to really pre-tax that stipend. But the biggest thing with the stipend is it allows you to control the budget, right? So you're not subject to carrier increases. You can really decide what you want to give employees, and you can control that number. And that could be a nice break if you've been on the carrier treadmill for a while. Next slide. All right, we're going to start here with MEC plans versus MERT plans. So minimum essential coverage was mentioned on the kind of first slide. Way to think about that is think about a skinny plan that kind of meets the minimum requirement, but that's really it, right? Effectively, what ACA requires for health coverage, if you're an ALE, which means you're more than 50 full-time employees, you're required to provide an ACA compliant health plan by law. Typically, this covers the cost of federally mandated preventative services, right? So there's like 10 or 11 things there on the list that you're forced to require. Typically, we would see folks, there are different types of MECs, right? So you can buy up to add individual products and features. And what we tend to see in the marketplace here, where people will use MECs, they tend to pair it with a hospital indemnity plan to get some catastrophic protection. We don't see a ton of these anymore. We do see them out there, so we know folks that do use them. So they're out there, so that way you're aware of them. So that is a minimum requirement. You can use a MEC. Fun fact there is actually some employers do use them to fund HSAs. So if you lost your old high deductible health plan and you really wanted to figure out a way, to get employees access to that HSA, right? You can actually use a MEC variant that is high deductible health plan compatible and actually fund an HSA through that vehicle. Where we're going to spend most of our time here are on MERPs, right? And there's kind of 3 different buckets of MERPs. So these are all Section 105 plans. Think HRA land is where these things live. They're all effectively variants of that. So the first one is what we would call a standalone MERP, which is a QSERA or Qualified Small Employer HRA. We're going to talk about that in a minute. That's typically good for smaller groups. Then we have what we call deductible gap HRA. This would be an integrated HRA with a medical plan, with a group plan, and that's typically a strategy to effectively, if I get a quote in for my premiums and a certain deductible level and the premiums are X, if I raise the deductible and effectively self-fund or take on that risk as an employer through some funding strategies with the HRA, I can actually reduce my premiums, right? So typically that's how that's used. We do run a bunch of those. And then individual plan MERPs, which came into existence literally in 2020, or ICHRAs, and we traffic in that space heavily as well. Next slide. Okay, just pausing here real quick while we're on the acronyms. We just want to be real careful and make sure we don't skip out over these items, right? So really the 3 fundamental building blocks of account-based plans. You've heard of flexible spending accounts maybe, or health reimbursement arrangements, which we just mentioned, or health savings accounts. The way to think about these core building blocks are really we use them in a variety of ways, in a variety of situations. But at a high level, the way we would think about them is to kind of track the differences. We really think about the funding source for these vehicles and where the funds reside, right? Flexible spending accounts have an IRS limit for 2022 of $2,850. They're employee funded through payroll deductions, right? So employees can pick 0 to 2850 typically, and the funds reside with the employer, right? So think payroll deducted. The employee can use these funds typically for all 213D expenses, right? So for out-of-pocket medical, and we see and use a lot of these plans. Health reimbursement arrangements, we mentioned those. Those are typically always employer funded, right? The funds reside with the employer. So think of employers trying to get you money, it's typically through an HRA. Employee money, typically through an FSA. And then we bring in a health savings account that's paired with a high deductible health plan. Theoretically, you can run all these blocks together, FSA, HRA, and HSA. If you do that, the FSA has to be for dental vision expenses only. But the health savings account can be funded by both, right? There are IRS limits for the funding, $3,650 for individual, $7,300 for family. And the point is that can be employer and employee money. And these are often used as a funding strategy, a way to give employees dollars. And by the way, they are portable. So when on any given year, if you were to terminate or leave an employer, the FSA and HRA are typically going to be left behind unless you continue with COBRA. But the HSA goes with you, right? So once those dollars are placed into an HSA, they are the employee's dollars even after they leave the firm. Next slide. Okay, so let's dig into QSERA here for a minute. So first of all, this is only for employers under 50, right? So you have to be under 50 to use this strategy. And the way to think about this is the stipend model, but we're flipping it pre-tax, right? There are funding limits. The 2022 IRS funding limits per employee, $5,450, so just over $450 a month. For a family, just over $11,000, or about $921 a month. So you can class those out, employee and family. You don't have to offer that full amount. You could say, hey, I want to give employees $250 a piece, and that's what I'm willing to do. One of the neat things about the QSERA is we tend to offer these with premium reimbursement and 213D expenses. So imagine for a second we had an employee who really wanted to use the QSERA to cover insurance premiums for a policy they bought in the marketplace. That works. If we have an employee who has spousal coverage but has out-of-pocket expenses, they can use the QSERA funds as well. One caveat here is on dollar for dollar offset for basically if you go to the marketplace and get a subsidy. So we want to be careful of that. And that's one of the things we'd help you kind of work through to make sure you're not assuming subsidy in the marketplace. But an example down bottom, you know, the employer decides to fund $250 a month or $3,000 a year for each full-time employee. And basically you put the money out there, the money's only spent as claims are filed. Next slide. Okay, so moving up from QSERA, when the group gets a little larger, we run a lot of QSERAs. I'd say the largest QSERA we probably run is around mid-20s, right? So that's kind of where we cap out on those. We tend to flip folks to the ICHRA model, right? Because the first thing that happens is we take away those QSERA funding limits, right? So they disappear. So you can really offer whatever you want to offer. One of the neat things about ICHRA is it really handles that kind of penalty A situation, right? So it gives you ACA compliance for over 50 employees. So this is effectively serves as a group health plan. So you don't just have to use a MEC, you can use an ICHRA, right? It's effectively a defined contribution program. The funding is really, it can be a flat amount. If you're under 50, we'll talk about the 3 modes here in a second, or you can do it via age banded tiers. But the whole point is back to this concept of budgeting for what you want to give to employees. We typically set these up as premium only, and the reason why we do that is we want to make sure employees can choose high deductible health plans on the exchange. They're HSA eligible, so we tend to restrict them to premium only. The 3 modes here are unaffordable, affordable, and hybrid. And the way to think about that is effectively unaffordable would be that flat dollar amount, that $250 a month. So in that example, you as the employer say, hey, I'm going to give everybody up to $250 a month. They can go to the exchange and buy whatever plan they want. And that's kind of how that works. And again, if you're under 50, you can make that determination. You can pick any number you want effectively. Once we move past that, we can get to what we call an affordable ICHRA, which means actually we want to age band that. So as you get older, you get more money, right? And then once you cross the 50 threshold, we really have to offer an affordable ICHRA, or we risk kind of bringing in penalty B. And the way to think about that is if you look at the bottom box there, you see as we move down the age brackets, 18 to 35, 36 to 47, the funding increases, right? And we have an employee count. And as we move down the list and we get into age 50s, you see the policies get a lot more expensive, right? So some employers will actually use a strategy where they will create an affordable ICHRA through the first 3 or 4 tiers, and then purposely limit the funding at some point to be unaffordable and kind of take the penalty risk on the last layer. So that's kind of an advanced strategy. We tend to do that for employers over 50. But the bottom line is this is the kind of thing, you know, we potentially help you work through and structure. So a lot of flexibility here, but again, a great option to really give you what you need there as far as precision around funding and being able to control your budget. Next slide.
So Mark, if I'm hearing you correctly, what this ICHRA does, it's a nice option of providing healthcare, but not having to be in the healthcare business as a small employer.
100%, yeah. And the key on the next slide, the key I would give you there, Doug, is really traditional group health plan. We talked about how that works. One of the great things about ICHRA is that if you make the offer of ICHRA, it can be waived, right? So imagine if we make an ICHRA offer of $250 a month to employees, but imagine that they're already on the individual marketplace and their subsidy is $400 a month, as an example. So in other words, their current deal, their subsidy is better than the employer offer. They can waive out of the employer ICHRA and keep their subsidy, right? Which is awesome. So that's really a great feature there. Typically for calendar year stuff, we've got an enrollment period, right, on the exchange through December 15th. If you're a mid-year plan start, if you're a 5-1 or 6-1, as an example, we've got a 60-day special enrollment period, so you don't have to wait till year end to start these plans. You can really do them at any time with that 60-day special enrollment period provision. Next slide. Okay, medical cost sharing. This is one we tend to use a lot in the marketplace as groups get a little larger. So imagine QSERA kind of down low, we move come to an ICHRA strategy, and then towards the end we would balance an ICHRA with a medical cost sharing strategy. And the reason why is if you've got a lot of younger, healthier employees that don't have significant pre-existing conditions, medical cost sharing can be a great cost-effective way to get catastrophic cover at a third of the cost of traditional fully funded insurance, right? So this would be very similar. A lot of you are probably familiar with some of the religious programs that are out there, things like Christian Healthcare Ministries or Medishare or Liberty, Sedera Health out of Austin, Texas, Zion Health out of Utah. These would be an example of medical cost sharing programs for small group, right? And the way to think about this is really it's not insurance, first of all, right? So it's not a fully guaranteed contract to pay. But what it does is it really puts you in a community of active healthcare consumers. And in this example, a structure we tend to run is you would have what's called an initial unsurable amount. It is not a deductible concept, but that's when the Sedera basically payout kicks in. So think you've got a $1,500 out-of-pocket expense. Once you have a procedure or an event that clears $1,500, that's when Sedera kicks in, right? But again, roughly a third of the cost. This is a real popular product. And for folks who have significant pre-existing conditions, we would say, hey, stay in the ICHRA market. Go get your gold, your silver, your bronze plan, and stay there. But for a lot of folks, this is actually a really good alternative. It can help employers really drive down cost, and employees as well, by the way.
So you can offer, kind of go backwards, you can offer an ICHRA together with the Sedera. So employees kind of pick and choose based on I'm healthy, I'm going the ICHRA or the Sedera route. I've got conditions, or my spouse does, I'm going the ICHRA route, go to the exchange and get a full plan.
Yep, and you can decide from year to year. So it gives you a ton of flexibility for catastrophic medical. It's awesome.
And for the employer, that means instead of paying for all your employees under a blue scenario, you're paying for, you can segment that and save money and provide better benefits than you probably could on your own, going straight to blue.
Absolutely. Yeah, and one of the things we're also trying to do with these strategies is bring a couple other concepts into play, right? So an example here would be back to this big idea of using insurance as a way to pay for healthcare. Well, you can also just pay for healthcare without insurance, right? And there are a lot of doctors out there in the primary care field who are actually leaving large healthcare systems. They're forming what we call DPC practices, or direct primary care practices. And what that really is the doctor leaves a large health system, basically sets up a gym membership, charges employees $70 a month, and becomes like the company doctor, right? So you get your physicals done there, all your basic stuff, labs at cost, right? It's a very cost-effective. A lot we see between $50 and $70 a month for access to a primary care physician. And if you've got chronic conditions, if you've got diabetes, it's a great way to get in to a primary care physician and not have a 6-minute visit, right? You can go have an hour-long visit and have somebody who's consistently kind of in your corner and not trying to get you out of the room in 6 or 7 minutes, right? So it's a great strategy. We tend to pair that with medical cost sharing a lot. And then the other thing we do is we tend to self-fund a lot of dental and vision plans. Typically, that's reserved for large employers, right? So typically, most employers under 200 fully fund things like dental using an insurance product or a vision insurance product. And really, we've built a system here that lets any size company self-fund dental and vision. And what we really do is remove the point of sale friction and the financial friction involved in those transactions. And the big idea is, look, we shouldn't force people to buy an insurance product for these things. Let's just give them the money. The big idea is let's get them to the dentist and the eye doctor. And if they don't spend it, the company keeps the money, right? So we've got a really cool system on how we do that. But the whole point is let's get people to the primary care physician. Let's get them to the dentist and the eye doctor. We can separate these costs from an insurance plan, right? And how this works in practice, just kind of backing up for a second, is think about the things I've told you about today, right? So think of a group as you move down from kind of 0 through 75, right? So 0, 10, 0, 15, 0, 20, somewhere in there, QSERA, it can be a great option, right? Once we kind of look into what you're doing and what's going on with your company, we tend to flip that to ICHRA with a dental vision program attached to that. That would be kind of the next play in the playbook. And then to Doug's point, kind of how we would line you up for a larger group, right? So let's say we're over 50, somewhere between 50 and 100. Typically, we're going to have 3 lanes. Lane 1 is going to be Sedera as a medical cost sharing option, paired with a DPC membership, also with the dental vision benefit, right? So healthy employees can say, yep, I want to take that. That's awesome. They can save a ton of money. Lane 2 would be for those who have pre-existing conditions or just want insurance, right? And that's where the ICHRA comes into play. So we run the ICHRA with the dental vision program alongside that. And then lane 3 would be folks who are like, look, I've either got spousal coverage or I'm not interested in catastrophic medical. They get dental vision and access to health FSA. And really for a group, kind of 50 to 75, that's about as good as we can do. And what our team really does is we really execute all these strategies, not only from a planning and a design standpoint, but we actually run them and execute them, right? And enroll employees and go, right? So think about us as kind of a turnkey shop. We're based here in Charlotte, and I'm gonna pause here. I think I'm probably over my time. But again, look forward to Q&A on the other side.
You're actually right at your time. That's like, wow, you couldn't have planned that better. But again, just to, there's a lot to go through. Thank you so much. But what I heard from that, which I think is very interesting, is this is an example where Here's my 3 swim lanes as a small employer. Again, I will tell you right now, the majority of small employers I talk to have been led to believe I've only got one option, and that option is call Blue Cross, call Cigna, and just take what you get. And right there, here's a plan where you've given a small employer 3 nice swim lanes. The middle swim lane will get that employee a much better insurance product than you probably can as a small employee by yourself in your little group plan. But the top lane helps the employee and the employer save money. And the bottom lane, it's kind of, you get something for all your employees based on where they kind of are in their life. But that's a powerful, I think, a powerful example. Is there a question here we need to ask now, Julia? I saw a hand raised.
No questions, Doug.
Okay. Wow. All right. Great. Thank you so much, Mark. Again, look forward to seeing on the other side here with Q&A.
You got it.
Okay. Great. So next up, and I think this fits this is why we did it this way, because we knew we'd have employers in every bucket. So if you recall from our poll, 65% of you are now in the fully insured market. So not here to bash that market. It provides a valuable service. And I'm happy to bring up Wilson McWilliams, who owns JWM Consulting. Wilson McWilliams just loves working with smaller companies. You don't often hear that in the broker community. And so it was refreshing. I've been referred to Wilson by several brokers who I know who said, if you got a small plan, Wilson is the person. So we thought it made sense to bring Wilson in front of you to talk directly to the 65% of you who are fully insured now. And let's just make sure we're maximizing that experience. So Wilson, take it away. Technical issues. Any questions as I go forward?
We are operating via telephone right now. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Hey, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Hope everyone's got a great holiday weekend planned. Like Doug said, me and my firm specialize in group insurance with small employers. So the reason why we kind of embrace this model is because I used to be a group rep in the industry. And I think the big thing for me is we saw a lot of group brokerages.
Are you on your phone, Wilson?
I am.
Yeah, make sure your PC is your laptop is muted. That's probably why you have feedback right now. You got 2 mics on.
Is that echo going away?
Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Perfect. Sorry about that. So the reason why we kind of started this firm was because I used to be a group rep in the wholesale industry on the ancillary side, and kind of saw a large acquisition phase. I'm sure everyone else has seen it in the state of North Carolina and around the country. And so, in seeing a wave of large corporate brokerages acquire talented local boutique group benefits firms, we've seen a lot of the kind of competition shrink. We've seen a change in behavior across a lot of firms, and that's understandable. A large brokerage out of New York or London or Chicago buys a local elite firm, and then in order to get return on investment, they kind of turn and incentivize that same team to swim up market and service larger and larger clients. And that's one approach. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but what has happened is it's happened all at the same time. And it's kind of created a vacuum effect that we're trying to combat. And so we believe the small group market is phenomenal. We service plenty of 1-man groups, 10-man groups, and above. And we kind of took the approach of everyone deserves the time, attention, and enterprise level of service, even if you are 25 employees or 40 employees or 70 employees, while everyone else is kind of all in the fighting in the same area, in the 100+, 200+ market. And I'd say the reason why group insurance is so popular at least in North Carolina, is the networks kind of stand out. If you go to the individual market, Blue Cross, a Cigna, et cetera, on the individual market, pretty much across the board, they have pared back their networks to achieve a level of profitability. So I'll give you an example here in the Triangle where we are based. There's only one hospital system available within Blue Cross, which is UNC Rex. We have Duke, we have Wake Med, but those are only available on the group side of things. And so we've seen that being emphasized, especially lately, because the teams are getting built a little differently. With this work from home, virtual strategy, we're seeing more firms kind of being spread out population-wise. So if you're in Charlotte, you might have some teammates in Cabarrus, you might have some teammates in Mecklenburg, you might have some teammates in Union County. Same thing in the Triangle. You might see people in Durham, you might see people in Johnston County, and all of the above. And so having a wide berth of hospital systems has become even that much more important, which you see in the group market. In the individual market, you're going to see pared back even down to specific counties. That's not common with a Blue Cross or larger carrier, but some of the smaller ones will limit you down to 1, 2, 3 counties at most in terms of your network. With group insurance, you kind of sidestep all that. The other piece is employees are used to it. They expect it. It creates a very smooth interview process. If you're hiring, that's kind of one of the qualifying questions that every employee asks. What are your benefits? And so it's pretty simple and direct to explain that you have X carrier provided through the company. And I think the final piece is you get a group broker and their team as your teammates. You get their ability to navigate in different ways. You get the ability to navigate carrier relationships and everything like that. And that's kind of the final point I want to talk on with these next couple slides is in the sub 50 market and sometimes in the 50 to 100 market or 50 to 99 market. Pricing is largely out of the broker's control, particularly in terms of the sub 50 market. And I can certainly understand the potential frustration around that. It's certainly something we would love to have more control of. And then, plus 50 is really about the way the plan ran and a broker's ability to negotiate. So if that is out of your control in terms of a 30-man group, if you're a 40-man company, what we try to bring as a value add in terms of the broker is what is your experience around the health plan and how are you thinking about this? And how is your broker emphasizing what you're offering? And so what we try to do is bring an element of human psychology into this kind of engagement piece. Because this is a huge investment from the company, we want to be able to celebrate that appropriately and tastefully. And we want to be able to look at this in terms of long range planning, et cetera, so that you have the right fit of plan. You're trying to build the right culture, you're trying to attract the right people, and you're trying to keep those same great people in your boat, in your castle, so to speak. So done appropriately, it's all three of those things where you can attract great talent and keep it. If it's done incorrectly, that can achieve the opposite, lower morale, drive people away, kind of disqualify that top tier of talent you're trying to get. And so that's where we as a brokerage spend a significant amount of time. Because we're locally owned, I own 100% of the company. I do not answer to shareholders. I do not answer to, a bottom line, so to speak. So it's all about just achieving our mission, which is servicing great local companies that aren't necessarily shown the same attention that they deserve. So what?
Wilson, talk a little bit. A question we have here is around at what point we talk about in the HR world. At what point do you get big enough to need an HR person? That's a debate that's been going on for decades. At what point do you get big enough as a company that it would be irresponsible to not engage a good broker consultant from an employee headcount?
Question.
I'm amazed how many companies I talk to a week, 20 employees, 30 employees, and they never even thought about it. You just call Blue Cross and got a plan.
Great question. So I would say if you are 10 employees and above, you need an employee, someone within the organization to be looking at this as a significant part of their job description. I believe once you're at 20 employees or more, you need a dedicated individual, and then you need potentially even some outside consultation. And we rely on Catapult's great benchmarking, a lot of resources. There's so many broad issues and items that HR has to handle, benefits just being one of those items. We typically want to see a dedicated individual at 20 and above, and certainly have some outside help with that, if that answered the question.
Yeah, I didn't ask it good. I'm sorry. At what point should you? I'm amazed how many employers I deal with that don't have a broker.
Understood.
At what point, what size level do you get to the point where it's almost irresponsible to try to go to this market on your own with no broker support?
Great question. I would argue if you have 5 employees and you want to be intentional with your plan design and know if you are spending the right amount of money, the fits that meet your employees' needs in terms of usage, I would say 3, 5, and above. The problem is that brokers have kind of trained the market, in our humble opinion, that we can't service you, and there are sometimes corporate mandates that prevent small groups from being serviced by their team. There's no reason why you can't have a broker at 5 employees or 10 employees. The reason why is every carrier in the group market in North Carolina has between 30, 40, even 60 plan designs a piece to choose from, and you need someone analyzing that on your behalf, in our opinion. And so we try to do that for every one of our clients. I shouldn't say try, we do that. And there may be 6 different plans that you haven't even been aware of, because no one was there to tell you, and no one was there to analyze the costs via the plan designs, et cetera. And so as brokers, we always ask our clients that walk through the door, what is driving your decision? Is it going to be costs? Is it going to be a carrier experience? Is it we need to analyze your employee agents, needs, et cetera? Is it you're being left behind in terms of your competitors are offering richer benefits and you're not getting the people that you need? Are you about to explode? Are you a startup that landed $10 million of funding and you're about to hire 30 people? All of the above. What is it that is driving the decisions in front of you? And that kind of shifts our framework of where we're operating from. Then we ask, do you want to be the top of line? Do you want to be the hirer of choice, that employer of choice? Do you want to kind of meet the industry? Or do you want to just focus on your individual situation and ignore it entirely? We're happy to do all 3. And we have the experience and exposure to kind of tell you where certain funding levels, plan designs would fit. If you do not have a broker to explain that, then you're kind of just guessing, in our opinion. And so that's fine. And sometimes that can work out great, but often we kind of say, why not employ a broker? So that's kind of where we're at. And then I think the final piece is we just see a lot of insurance decisions being made on a reactive nature, meaning here's our situation right now, and we're going to make a decision for the next 12 months, and then we're going to just kick the can down the road. We would prefer to have a 3 to 5 year plan in place. And this allows us to make intentional decisions as opposed to just reactions. It allows us to employ a psychology with the team, and basically use benefits as they're intended, which are an investment in your team and a great recruiting tool, a great retention tool. If we go to the next slide. So the reason we typically want a 3 to 5 year outlook is because we need to employ a little PR. We need to leverage some internal narratives with your team. And so, a basic law of PR is tell good news slowly and bad news fast. Now, our instinct as human beings is to do the opposite. If we have great news, hey, we're doubling the contribution as an employer, we kind of try to rush that out, and then we kind of typically try to tell bad news slowly because we don't want to, it's difficult, it's painful. So we want to do the opposite though. We want to build on plans every year if possible. Now, if that means starting slower than we otherwise would, let's do that. The reason is it's very hard to go backwards in terms of human psychology and benefits, meaning, employees, hey team, we were paying for X and now we gotta decrease that by 10%. Or we were at this plan design, we gotta decrease the richness by 10%, things like that. Now, as a business owner myself, I completely understand budgets. I completely understand, a certain performance that your company has had, and maybe that's necessary. But what we'd rather see is let's start at a point and let's have a 3 to 5 year plan where we are going to map out decisions and we're going to try enhance these plans year over year and have all this mapped out. And it does not have to be massive enhancements. They can be very, gradual year over year. At least we're adding something, or we're doing something. What that does is it builds a narrative within your team where they say, wow, ABC Corp, every year we have a meeting, it gets better and better. Well, I probably should stick around for another year or two and see where that leads us. And so that's kind of more empowering from our perspective of where you're not just reacting to year over year. It's more of a, hey, we knew this was coming, and let's move forward and let's add onto this. That's how you retain talent, and that's how a new hire comes in. And when you're not there, other teammates are saying, hey, you want to stick around because it always improves. So welcome, and we hope you're here for a long time. And then it allows for people to actually look forward to the enrollment meeting. Insurance is kind of dense enough, but if they know that you are committed to a certain plan and making this the best place to work, they're excited to see what's next, and that helps you keep your team, reduce turnover, and kind of makes gives you confidence in a kind of very uncertain world, if that's fair to say. Next slide. So I think one piece, and this kind of goes back to the change in terms of the acquisitions across the brokerage market I referenced earlier, was that renewal timing is very important on our end. So we actually start a renewal process 100 days out from your effective date. What we're trying to achieve is 3 numbers. We call it a 70-30-30, meaning we're trying to get you your plan renewal 70 days out. So you have 30 days to enroll, consider the plan design. You have a full month to where we can go back and forth. We can talk through things. We can talk through ownership, their reactions, their needs. We can go over the plan that we've already set in place and go back to carriers, negotiate, try different plan designs, see where costs fit, and then have 30 days to then we've implemented the plan, we've submitted everything 30 days from that effective date. So you have a smooth rollout, ID cards come out great, everything's easy from day one. And if you do the math, that leaves a 10-day enrollment window. So I don't think, and this is up for discussion, I don't want to box anyone in. We feel like 10 calendar days is a great time frame. If you have enough time and space to talk with your spouse, your family about the changes in place, the costs associated, but it's not so long that people kind of put it off to the last minute and kind of sign on. If we're given 3 weeks, you kind of put it off to the side and forget about it. So everything's very intentional from that perspective. If you guys are, if a company is over 50 employees, sometimes that renewal comes out even earlier. But what we find is if you're a small employer with a large corporate brokerage, sometimes the larger clients of that effective date are kind of put in front of others. And so then you're receiving the renewal maybe 50 days, 45 days from your effective date. And that really shrinks the window of what, you can decide to do. Making a financial decision like that, with benefits being, one of the largest expenses for a company, we find that's kind of disservice to companies in general. You all need time. If there's an increase, if there's a decrease, you need to be able to time to either absorb that increase, evaluate plans, or take advantage of a decrease and see if you can add on other things. But without time, it becomes very emotional. It becomes, decisions are kind of rushed and things aren't what they should be. So that's where we take a lot of time to do that. And so we ask our clients, I'll ask you at the bottom of this slide, if you look over the last 3 years, how close to the date have you received your renewal? How much time do you have to consider it? And how long was that enrollment implementation process? That's where a lot of a broker can really prove their value if the time frame is appropriate, because there is a lot of back and forth. It's hard to do it in a tight time frame. Next slide. So, we talk about fully insured. It's very straightforward. You pay the carrier, they're taking all the risk on, and you kind of manage the plan within that. When we see a client reach 20 employees or more, we do like to see at least consider a level funding plan, which means there's some underwriting involved. We can get a look at the employee counts and potentially find some significant savings, sometimes 20% even. And then if you run well, if there's profit to be had from the carrier's perspective, they will split that profit and give it back to the company, provided, of course, you renew with them. But it's a great way to kind of take a look and take advantage of your healthy population if you have it. And then, of course, they have mechanisms to basically cap your risk much like a fully insured. So you get a little bit of best of both worlds, where if you're a healthy group, you can see the savings, but you can still be kind of safe under that risk profile. Another method we like to use is we'll leverage an HRA within a group plan. We had a group out of Rocky Mount, great client. They had they had a plan that was getting a significant increase from a carrier last October. And we said, hey, we can switch carriers, introduce an HRA. And what we did is chose a more conservative plan on paper, but the owner just took on the risk through an HRA to reimburse employees if they had catastrophic events. And it basically mirrored a rather rich plan, but without the cost. And so we have tools to leverage. And Catapult, we use them for some of those models where we can use an FSA or an HRA to enhance a plan without having to make drastic plan design shifts, et cetera. An HSA with funding, younger populations, healthier populations. HSA is a phenomenal tool. It needs to be intentional, however. So consider your industry, consider your comp and your pay. A highly paid workforce can leverage an HSA much better than a one that's not as highly compensated. Consider the ages of your team, consider what they've said to you. So it's all about that's where a broker can really come in if they're spending the appropriate time with you and your team to get to know the DNA of your company. And so that's what we try to do. It is out there, and that's the key to kind of maximizing a group insurance plan. Most of you have a group insurance plan already. It's just a matter of who is on the other side helping you with those decisions.
So
and
Wilson,
that is what I have.
one question we have here, which we get a lot, and I'll go ahead and give you grace if you can't answer it in a minute or less. But
Sure.
You made a point, for example, that once you get around 20 employees or so, then level funded, and Mark said similar things about other things. So I mean, employees, benefit eligible employees, employees on your plan? What do you mean by 20? What are you really saying there?
Great question. I'm glad we could qualify. So 20 eligible employees, full-time employees, 30 hours a week or more, and you need a 50% to participate is usually that minimum requirement. So great option if you have great participation already. You're 30, 40 employees. We kind of say, why not look at this? You don't have to choose it. If you're a high-risk group, you'll be, they'll decline to quote you level funded, and then that fully insured is your best route. But you should at least consider it.
Okay.
And
but
so that's
20
kind of
eligibles and only 4 take the insurance. You're not that's a different conversation.
Correct. Yep. So if you have 40 employees but only 3 on the plan, it's not going to be an option. So just know that. Right. But I'm glad you qualified that. Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Wilson. I mean, the 2 things I wrote out. I loved your PR quote, by the way, and that's a good lesson for all of us in HR. The fact that tell good news slowly and bad news fast. And you're right. We want to just stick on the good news and keep telling it fast and get it out there, and then we dribble over a period of days or weeks bad news. Not a good idea. And I also love what you said. Just about, hey, when you get around 20, 25, whatever, pick a number, it makes sense to start looking. We heard the same message from Mark today. Again, that's not the experience that I tend to see most small employers. Most small employers, right or wrong, not here to bash anybody, but they've been kind of kept in either they're trying to self-serve it themselves and they're going straight to Blue Cross. Blue Cross wants to keep them in the track, or they're with a partner broker or consultant, or they're with some other kind of plan where they're just not getting that advice. So again, thank you so much for laying that out. And again, the main message here being, hey, there are brokers out there who really want to help small employers. So thank you so much, and look forward to seeing you a few minutes on the Q&A side. All right.
Perfect.
Is it now time for a poll, Julie, I believe, poll number 2, if we can. Really very quick, easy question here. There we go. Agree, disagree. This is going to hopefully tee up our next session. If not, I guess we'll end now and say goodbye. All right, how about some results here? All right, well, good. Like I say, had this been reversed, then we might just say, well, I guess we're wasting everyone's time. This isn't a problem. So yes, 3/4 of us believe that the employees are paying too much. And this is a kind of a headline or a sideline or whatever line that doesn't get talked about a lot. We talk a lot about the impact on the companies. Oh my gosh, we got 35% renewal and we negotiated down to a 15%. Great news. And that's as bad as that is. We don't oftentimes talk about the impact that this is having on our employees. And so I'd love to bring up now Patrick Long. Patrick is the CEO of Hero Health Plans. As you know, full disclosure, Catapult is a co-owner of the Hero Health Plan. We believe in it strongly. It's our health plan for our employees who love it. He's here to talk about, this is an impact on, yes, the company, but in some cases, more importantly, it's bankrupting many employees who in many cases forego needed treatment because they just can't afford it because of your plan. And so Patrick's going to talk about at the other end of the spectrum. We've had a good journey so far between the other options that are there. We're kind of at the other end of the spectrum, which is, hey, even for small employers, self-funding and all the riches and benefits and options that brings is also an option. So Patrick, take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. And you brought up the term journey, and that's important. I think Catapult is an example. Y'all were fully insured. I'm sure that if you went back far enough, there wasn't insurance at some point, but you're fully insured for a long time, and you switched carriers quite often, as I remember. And then you went level funded, kind of that next stage. And as Wilson smartly pointed out, you go from the carrier keeping all 100% of any unspent premiums to getting a split. And then now you're self-funded with us. So your journey has been from small, medium, large, or not large. Y'all are what, about 60 employees or 55 employees on the plan. And so I'll focus on the journey. I think it's important for everybody on this call to take advantage of everything that Catapult's offering. This webinar is just the start of a conversation. there's so many options out there, and we've been bombarding you with information. I ran out of ink writing down everything from Mark Gully and from Wilson. There's so much good stuff. I think the lesson I've learned so far on this action-packed hour is that you really need that. First of all, that Catapult's here to provide experts and all the resources. That's awesome. That's nobody else is doing it like Catapult. Secondly, you got to take advantage of it. The ball's in your court as a business owner or an HR professional or a CFO or anybody who has a stake in the future of the company to take advantage of these things and to reach back out and start that conversation. Like Wilson said, you got to get through renewal. We called it kabuki theater. Renewal is such a painful process that people tend to put it on the back burner, and you got to tackle it and have a strategy. And if you have a 3-year, 4-year, 5-year strategy, you've got a benchmark to operate against. And that's critical. Even if you have 10, 20, 30 employees or more, of course, you need to have a strategy. And so that's how we approach it. But and maybe we'll go dive into some of these slides and talk a little more. Okay, so this little cartoon we like to pop up every once in a while, and it's something we'd like to avoid, but unfortunately, I was in a meeting yesterday in Roanoke with about 20 business owners and HR folks, and there's some uncomfortable laughter sometimes when they see this. That feels like their meetings. That healthcare costs keep going up, benefits have been cut, as Mark Gully showed on that graph, where even if benefits aren't cut, the price for the benefits, the out-of-pocket or take-home pay gets impacted every year, and that cost shifting from plan to people. And then what's the impact on your culture? We're in the war for talent gets overused, but this 3 R's we talk about: recruiting, retention, and reputation. And what's the impact of your benefits? So you have to, again, more strategy is needed. I'll go to the next slide, please. And here's too often what people feel. We got this cartoon idea from one of our first clients, and he said, "Man, we've been on the merry-go-round." I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "We switch horses every 2 or 3 years. We've been with Blue Cross and United and Aetna and Cigna, and then back to Blue Cross. And it's always the same thing. And we're just getting tired of being on the merry-go-round. We want control." And our advisor was telling us, just switch horses if you don't like the current renewal rates. And eventually, it's just the same news. The BUCAs, as Doug pointed out, Blue, United, Cigna, Aetna, and Humana, who doesn't operate in North Carolina, but the BUCAs, they all have the same margins. They all have the same, they change vice presidents every 2 years. They all have the same contracts. As we say, there's nothing preferred about a preferred provider organization when 100% of the hospitals are in it and 99% of the doctors. So there's nothing preferred about that. It's really a rate schedule. It's how much their secret contract is for the payments that you're making and your employees are paying. What I really don't like about the BUCAs, and there's a long list, but I'll start with this. They call themselves the payers. That's how they refer to themselves at conferences where we speak or go. Blue Cross, United, Cigna, and Aetna call themselves the payers. And that takes a lot of guts to say that, because you're paying, your people are paying, your plan, your company is paying, and they're middlemen. And so what we do is with our plans, which are for 25 and higher, 25 employees on the plan. That was a great question, Doug. Our legal limit or statutory threshold is 25 employees on the plan, and to be to a hero plan. And what we do is just use them for what they are, which is a fee schedule, a rate to pay. And if you could go to the next slide, please. And we can skip this. This is more about us. We'll send you the slides for these, just kind of what we do. I guess I could emphasize that HERO's about 3 things. Demonstrably better care for your people. We steer to quality, not hospital doors. Lower costs because we have direct contracts with most of the top providers. and more control. You get all your data with us. We don't hide it or sell it like the BUCAs do. We give it to you. We make it actionable. So those are the main three things. If you care deeply about better care, lower costs, and more control, then we'd be interested in talking with you. This is just stuff we'll put in the deck for y'all to get about the benefits that have to be included in certain plans. Go to the next slide. And you know, the part about this, without going into all this self-funding stuff, I was at that conference yesterday in Roanoke with all those, they were county governments and nonprofits and manufacturers and paving companies and teachers. There was all sorts of people there. It was a great mix. And what it came down to when we talk about what kind of plan is right for you, because it's, you know, just like Mark Gully said, and Wilson would agree, and I agree, our plans are not right for everybody, right? You have to meet them where they are, and that's what this webinar is all about. I would say for Hero, the deciding factor after you have 25 employees on your plan or more is, do you want to be a renter or an owner? If you want to rent your network, Blue Cross would be happy to take your check, or Cigna, or Aetna, United. Send them a check every month, and out goes most of the risk and all of the reward out the window. And you're renting access and their fee schedule, and you're not getting any service or anything like that. If you want to be an owner and you want to control your destiny more, you want your data, you want your people to see better doctors, you want transparency, you care more about ethics and transparent contracts and who's getting paid what, and you'd like everything to be above board, lower drug costs, lower costs for imaging and surgeries and stuff like that. You want to be an owner, that you have that mentality, that mindset, then we'd like to talk with you. Or companies like Hero are more your cup of tea. So that's really a big dividing line, I think, for decision makers, is whether they want to rent or own. And if you do care deeply about having control and ownership, then you really have to have that mindset. It really matters to have that mindset of being an owner. Then what we talk about is unbundling, and that gets a little too deep for that could be a whole other webinar. But think about it like this. You know, I'm a lot older than most of you, I guess, but the cable companies, when they came in, they were fighting against NBC and ABC and CBS, and they started offering more and more things. There was like 5 channels on cable when I was 10 years old or something. Now there's 500. But there's a lot of garbage nobody even watches, and so, but the price kept going up, and finally it reached astronomical levels every month. And you just send a check to Comcast or to Spectrum or to whomever, and you get everything, and you get no service, of course. But if you unbundle, you cut the cord, as they say, and you start only buying the things you want. You maybe like Amazon or Netflix or both, or Disney Plus or ESPN or what have you. You start to get your own package. It's customized, it's personalized, it fits you, it fits your household. And so that's similar to what we're talking about. You're paying for things when you're in a BUCA plan that you don't want or need, don't fit your company. But if your mindset is there and you're ready to self-fund, you're ready for a proactive plan, then it's unbundled. And there's 4 pieces to it. I won't go into numbing detail, but the first one is the insurance, and that's self-funding. This slide here, that's the insurance. How are you protecting your plan and your people? The risk. How are you paying for that? The second one is medical. Obviously, claims for doctors and hospitals and all of the rest. The third is pharmacy, and that's growing the fastest. That's often, gosh, it used to be 15% of plan spend, and now it's 25, 30, 35% of spending is pharmacy. And the fourth one is really the engagement with the employees. You know, Blue Cross, United, Cigna, Aetna, the BUCAs are going to do nothing to engage your employees, or very little. It's all up to the broker. And so what we say is we need to help your broker, assist your broker by giving them things to engage, by engaging with nurses and pharmacists on our plans and all sorts of things to get an individualized health plan for all of those people in your company, all of their dependents, if you have them on your plan. And so when you unbundle a traditional plan, a BUCA plan, you see all of these things in those 4 big buckets: insurance, medical claims, pharmacy claims, and then the thing they really ignore that we put front and center, which is engagement. Having a nurse assigned to every plan and a pharmacist, getting direct primary care out, like Mark said, out to your people, engaging with them with monthly webinars and visits, and even refrigerator magnets with their faces and secure HIPAA compliant text lines and emails on there, so that they feel comfortable at home asking questions or getting advice. All of those things help the engagement. And so I just, keeping it at a high level, if you have the mindset of an owner and you want to really control your destiny and you have that strategic thinking, it's really important for you to understand what unbundling is and what you're getting into. The first thing on the insurance would be self-funding, and again, we'll send you these slides, but about how to do that. That's a little deeper dive than what we're doing today. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah, some more details around self-funding. Doug alluded to some of these earlier. I think the key thing is the myth busters part of this. A lot of people have a perception that we've heard this before, that if we go self-funded, we have to pay every claim. And I said, no, you just write one check every month, just like you are now. And they're like, we don't have to pay for every claim? No, you pay one monthly check, covers everything. And they're, oh, okay. And then they say, well, it varies every month. We can't budget for it. And we said, no, you can do essentially a level funded. If you're paying $40,000 a month right now to Blue Cross or United, it'll be about $40,000 a month to us, and we'll pay all the claims and pay all the vendors and everything. But at the end of the year with self-funding, you get to keep 100% of the unspent premiums, not 50-50 like level funded or 0 like fully insured. You keep 100%. And so a lot of people, they've been told, either exaggerated or competing brokers or whatever are saying things, but it's really important for people to get a grip on what self-funding really is. 95% of large companies are self-funded. 2 out of 3 American workers are in a self-funded plan. The only part of the market that is not self-funded as a majority are the people that qualify from 25 to 100. Because the BUCAs have really controlled that market, don't give you any data, don't share any claims with you, don't even help the people who are like pre-diabetic get attention they need so they're high A1Cs and they could have a correction and prevent diabetes. The BUCAs aren't interested in reaching out to them. They're not going to help you. They're not going to share that information with our fellow humans to make things better. Or we saw a plan yesterday with Blue Cross has Duexis on it. If you're on Blue Cross, I'll challenge you with this. Go into your formulary and look up DUEX and see if you see Duexis on your formulary. That's about a $3,000 a month fee, $3,000 a month for that prescription. And all it is ibuprofen and Pepcid AC combined. It's a $10 drug they're charging you $3,000 for every month. And so if you see that on your formulary, you're being ripped off by Blue Cross, and others do it too. But there's hundreds of these examples we don't have time to go into, but once you become self-funded, you start to get all your data, you start to make it actionable, you start to get control, and you have an ownership mindset. And that's what we're talking about.
So, Pat, a couple of questions here, Patrick, are good question. I mean, so talk about briefly. So again, this kind of goes with your myths, but one thing that happens a lot in trying to manage the employee details in these self-funded plans. This person uses Navigator. What platforms are available to sync between payroll, HRS, broker plans, et cetera. So I guess it's the notion of the feeling that I'm on my own if I go
Yeah.
self-funded and I've got to somehow do all this work.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and it's I'm not exaggerating to say that there, and I defer back to clients like Catapult. We come in eyes wide open and tell people the first 6 months are going to be much more work. I'd say maybe 10 or 15% more work for the HR person, because they're getting to learn a new system. Like you just mentioned, we use Employee Navigator or others. We plug into anybody. All we need is the eligibility file, right? And if that comes from Employee Navigator, or even if it's an Excel spreadsheet, whatever it is, it just has to be ingested into our TPA system, so that when any provider calls and says, "Hey, I've got this card that says Doug Blizzard is a member. Is he they call for eligibility?" They say yes. So we just need that. We work with any system as long as we end up with an eligibility file that's updatable. Yeah.
There are also options we see. I think another thread of her question here is, well, if you're small, they're not going to do carrier feeds. You're going to have to manually key all this data back and forth. I know there are options out there that provide for that.
No, I mean, I can't speak to what other people have done to those folks. That's too bad. But no, we take and we work with the brokers all over the Carolinas and Virginia, right? So we're also a broker, but we don't do that. We don't use that. We'll work with your broker. Full disclosure too, we work with Wilson and Mark Gully because we find them to be specialists, experts in their field, right? And so we work with your broker. A lot of times those agencies have good technology that's more compatible, and you would like to use that, or we have our own. And so it's relatively easy, especially if you use Employee Navigator, which is kind of the lingua franca of eligibility files. So.
What another question we got here? What holistic health-oriented additional offerings are also available in a self-funded, like fitness, diet, training, dietitians, et cetera? I mean, what is it? Literally, you have a plethora of options versus just what you're given by the carrier?
Yeah. So if you become self-funded, which we require, we can't work with the Blue Cross United Cigna. We only work with self-funded, and then we rent networks like Cigna's network or MedCost network or others. We don't want to use them for the data or hiding things or selling things or all that kind of stuff. Once you become self-funded, you can do whatever you want as far as getting people to better care. For instance, imaging. We saw a $6,000 claim for an MRI at UNC in Raleigh, and our price right across the street at Raleigh Radiology is $600. Same machine, better doctor, cleaner facility, less COVID, less MRSA, less, and 10% of the cost. So our employees, your employees, pay zero if they choose wisely and go to the low cost option. But we're not a narrow network. You can still go to UNC or Duke and overpay. We just give people options to go to the lower cost, higher quality facilities. You get all of these kinds of things. So we have everything from lab work for zero to diabetic supplies, urgent care, second opinions at Mayo Clinic for cancer and other high cost, real mission critical chronic conditions, telemedicine, all sorts of things. We have addiction counseling, one-on-one with peers. The list goes on and on. We're starting an allergy program. You might have noticed North Carolina is like second in the country with bad allergies. And so there's so many allergy claims here that we reached out to several allergy specialists, and we're testing them for who's the best. And again, that'll be zero out of pocket for our members. And the reason why, Doug, we can offer all these things is because the price is so much lower. When you save $5,000 on an MRI, or $50,000 on a spine surgery, or $30,000 on a knee surgery, that adds up. And that enables us to enhance the plan so that all the people on the plan, they don't all use one thing. There might be 3 people using the allergy, 4 using the radiology, 3 using the surgery, 2 using, it goes on and on. But you start to help everybody over the course of the year. And so that's where the magic happens for us, is the savings come from direct contracts, but the renewals and the engagement comes from offering multiple enhancements to the plan.
Right. I could go on forever. We're getting to our Q&A time though, Patrick. I mean, I think I'll summarize. There's several other questions, and I think this explains why I know why you're there. The theme of a lot of the questions is what we see happen a lot. For a lot of companies, when they go and they self-fund, all they do is just, as Patrick, there's 4 quadrants. They fund the insurance, but I can tell from the theme of the questions here, a lot of people believe then you're kind of on your own in the Wild West. You have no plan, you have no insurance, you have no nothing. That is totally not what this is like. Plans like Hero, it's a complete plan. It's an ACA approved plan. It sits on top of a PPO plan. Again, we don't have time to go into that. But my point to all the participants today is, if you've been led to believe that self-funding means get out your checkbook and people just go where they want to go and you just write a check for it, that is 180 degrees not what self-funding today is. And I would encourage you to watch some of our videos we've had online for some other programs we've done. We do a session every other month. We got one coming up in May here with Hero. But again, please, that is a huge myth that self-funding is some kind of Wild West. But I'm going to call the other speakers up now so we can end this. We only got a few minutes. Are there remaining questions for any of the speakers, Wilson or Mark or Patrick? No one cares what I think, but at least for those 3 experts, are there any questions? We've got a few minutes here. I'm going to open my little question screen here, or Julie, if you can kind of pipe in. Let's see, all kinds of testimonials here about expensive formularies, no doubt about that. Multiple states. Go ahead.
Hey, Julia here. Did we go into detail about having networks outside of the state? Someone asked about having employees that are not in North Carolina with Hero and having that kind of network.
Yes, well, I'll speak for everybody. Yeah, it's there's reciprocal arrangement. It's really plan dependent, but yes, you are able to get what we commonly refer to generally as a wrap network for other folks, or you can do a full network and with limitations. So if you have 25 people in Atlanta but 200 in Charlotte, or 5, I know Catapult has members in 3 or 4 states that work remotely, maybe Kansas City, Chicago, Maine. There was like 3 or 4. So we cover all of them, and it could be, if it's one person, it's individualized, but if there's a concentration, we certainly can rent another network.
How about in the ICHRA QSARA space? Is that even an issue at all, or the sharing market, Mark?
No, it's really based on where the employees are, right? And for all the ancillary stuff, we're using pre-tax cash, and that's good anywhere, right? No network to even worry about.
And what about in the fully insured world for small employers? Because I know even small employers have employees all over the country. How does that work in your world, Wilson?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we see, every carrier, well, I should take that back. So I'll be very specific. In the fully insured world for Aetna, their coverage is based for only North Carolina employees. United and Blue in the fully insured world kind of have reciprocal arrangements per state. I will say, and same thing with Cigna, the thing is the carriers operate differently in terms of cost and kind of how that operates. So you can see a different experience based on the carriers. But I think when you go level funded, those change. So just for fully insured, there are differences. And then for level funded, it goes national for Aetna's national, things like that. So that's the only where I get really specific. But the experience and price can be different for out-of-state employees depending on your carrier choice.
Another reason to get a broker involved, if you've got, again, maybe only 15 employees, but you've got 3 here, 3 in Texas, 3 in Colorado, and 3 in it's just not, it's very tough to go on your own here. I'm not sure this question here, what do you suggest for an employer who has 10 employees? That's all I don't know what the qualifier there was. I mean, I think we've
Hey,
kind of gone
Doug,
through.
I think she's asking for an employer who has 10-month employees, so not 12-month employees. I guess an example would be like a teacher who doesn't work in the summer. So healthcare options regarding that.
So kind of a transient workforce doesn't work all year. Any thoughts there, anybody?
I would say for the fully insured space, you would have to qualify it with the carrier to see if they're comfortable with certain setups. Probably industry determines a lot of that. And then kind of their average hourly work space as well. So that's kind of the eligibility piece too is, 30 hours a week. And so you gotta, if they're going to consider a 10-month work period in 12 months, you got to kind of consider that too. I would say that's case by case from my standpoint. Not that I, to address the question, but just from my end, I probably have to review it individually, if that's fair to say.
Again, probably not an issue.
For us, it would be this, if they're W-2 employees, that's not a problem. I would say if they're, for us, if it was a school and they or any, landscapers and others that have, short, but if they're W-2, there's no problem. But if they're smaller than that, I would give them to, Mark and Wilson. Mark, what do you say?
Yeah, we just want to get more information on exactly what's going on and kind of what the ramp rate is. But if we, the answer is a follow-up call, right? That's how we could kind of sort out how we could help you and kind of dig into the details. So that's really it.
Okay, looking at my questions here. We addressed most of them going through it intentionally. Yeah. We are at, oh my gosh, time is flying. I really appreciate the journey y'all have all taken us on today. From really, that really is how I think we look at it when we talk to our members. Where are you? How many employees do you have? What's your thoughts here? Do you want to have control or not? Do you want to get progressive or not? Do you want to do something different? What are you trying to do? And we just see employers come in many different shapes and sizes, and they're very different on that. And so I think hopefully, if for those of you who came today, we walked you through that journey, and if nothing else, you learn several things. One, deliver good news slow and bad news fast. You learn that there are many options for you as a small employer. So do not believe if you're being told by whoever you're being told by, sorry, you've only got one option. That's not true. I mean, I think you learned how you can maximize your insurance. If you have full insured, you learn some really creative. And again, I guess I'd also say all these models today are existing models being used with hundreds of. This is not some. Wouldn't it be cool if we put together QSARA and added a dental plan to it? Now, these are all these are all happening with tons of clients. So, I mean, if any of this today piqued your interest, we'll be getting follow-up stuff from us that you can take to the next level and learn more about some of these models or whatnot. So we encourage you to reach out to these gentlemen today and learn more if your interest is piqued. I guess I've been asked to say a few things. You just moved my slide there. Just some upcoming sessions. Again, next month we're doing a mental health session on May 10th. We got our big labor law conference, employment law conference coming up, which is always a popular, learn about all the things happening. And we've been on reprieve now for a couple of years, thanks to COVID. So happy to come back here and get this in person again, at least partly in person. And then again, if you were really intrigued by the notion of the self-funding option, come back in May and learn more or call us, either one. So you'll get a follow-up email from us. That's kind of the next step. I think the next slide is kind of some credit information as far as the numbers. If you're here to get credit, please do that. And again, we'll email all this stuff out to you within a couple of days, I guess sometime this week, including the recording. So any questions you have, we're happy to be a funnel to these fine gentlemen. If you have a question, email Julia there, and she'll be happy to hook you up with the right people. And that's our goal. I think we met our goal today. You got a lot of options. Don't think you're stuck. Take a minute or two to breathe, and then get in touch with the right people, and they can help you down this path and to a world where you don't have to dread renewal or be embarrassed by your insurance plan or have to keep having those calls from your upset employees because things were not covered or this didn't work. There are better options for you. So it is now 3 o'clock. With that, I'm going to hang up. Again, thank you again, Patrick, Mark, and Wilson did a great job. And everyone have a great day and a great Easter weekend. And hope to talk to you soon. Goodbye.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.